Good. Now, are there any questions, please? Question, what about prophecy? Answer, prophecy. As far as I am concerned, prophecy is over true prophecy. Fortune-telling, I do not go in for it. Teacup leaves and cards, astrology, all that is simply, well, abracadabra. But if one believes it, it will come to pass, because you're working on the law of belief. But when it comes to prophecy, prophecy is over. The Bible, the entire Old Testament, is one of prophecy, and the one in the New is the one who came to prepare the way, John the Baptist. That is the end of the prophecy. Now it's fulfillment. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and now is the time of fulfillment of the kingdom. We're entering the kingdom, all of us, because the whole thing is over and has been proven true. The first to rise from the dead opened up the door, and all are rising into the kingdom, clothed in bodies of glory. No more prophecy. But if someone wants to sit down and read you the cards, be amused. But the chances are they are always so negative. They sit down and tell you the strangest things, and you are all carried away emotionally, and you are planted. Right there, you are planting. And then you will say, how wise they were. It came to pass. Because it's going to come to pass. If you accept it and give credence to the thing, it will come to pass. Question, what about someone like Jean Dixon? Answer, they never tell you when they fail. They will always tell, if I prophesy 1,000 things, I've got to get one. If I take all the nominees now and I tell each, you are going to get it, well, there are only about 5 or 4. I will omit the last 3, the communist fellows. They haven't any chance. So I won't tell them, but I will tell the other parties, the 3 parties each. You are going to get it. Well, I will guess 1 out of the 3 anyway. That's a good mark. So you can't fail. If I get 1 out of 3, that's a tremendous percentage. So tell them all. That's what the world does. So she comes out, and what she said to one person, she publicized because it came to pass, but she wouldn't tell you all the others that didn't. Question, inaudible on tape. Answer, well, my dear, always do everything in the present as though you had it. Always go to the end as though you had it. The end is where I start from. The minute you say, yes, but, then you don't believe it. You say, you need the money now. Well, I say, assume that you have it now. Ah, but, well then you haven't assumed it at all. Walk through the door just as though you had it. You might stumble on it out there. Walk as though you had it. Live in the assumption of the wish fulfilled. Live in it as though it were true. Question, inaudible on tape. Answer, well, I tell you one thing. We have a vivid example of it right now. No one wanted the White House more than Johnson, but he had to take a second place. But he got the White House, and not by election the first time. He went down to that convention convinced that he was going to get it, and then Kennedy got it. Kennedy lasted 3 years and made his exit at the hand of the assassin, and then he stepped right into the breach within a matter of hours. Well, minutes, really. Then he got the election on his own the second time, but no one wanted it more than he did. So, here you find a perfect example that although he didn't get it, he got it. So I will say to anyone, I wouldn't say, you can't get it. I would say to anyone, assume that you are sleeping in the White House. But will they believe me? The chances are they wouldn't. That's why they are running for office. They go to church as people wear a cane. They feel better dressed. When my father was a young man, he wore spats if he came to a cold climate, and a cane. That was in order. He felt undressed if he didn't have that. My father-in-law wouldn't be seen dead without a cane and spats. He died in 42, but until he died, was dressed only if he had his cane. He had about 20 of them, and his spats. Well, now, people go to church in the same way. They don't believe it. Why, Johnson goes 3 and 4 times on a Sunday morning. He goes with one daughter to the Catholic Church, with another daughter to the Protestant Church, and he goes over with King to the Baptist Church. For what purpose? That he may be photographed? Why a camera at every place that he goes? They have to be there, that the paper the next day can show how holy he is. Question, Neville, as you went gliding across this group of people with these infirmities, did you have the feeling that you recognized these people, that they were people that had passed you in this life, or were they strangers? Answer, no, Bob. As far as I am concerned, they were simply the unknown. Not one face did I recognize, and not one person interested me. I simply walked by, identified with perfection, and they were made perfect. Question. Inaudible on tape. Answer. I would try it. I would definitely try it. I believe in taking God at His word and trying anything. The mere fact that I can become aware of desiring to have the revelation, I will then take His law, which is fundamental, and assume that I've had it. I doubt the average person really wants the revelations. A friend of mine dropped dead suddenly here 3 years ago. He was an author, a writer. He used to write for TV. In the old days of vaudeville, he had all the big shots. And Jean would say to me, "Neville, I love all the things that you do and all the things that you stand for, but I've got to live first." He meant living, just playing the field. That's all he meant, playing the field, and he thought that was really living. Well, one day, sitting in his room, he finally got married, and sitting in the suite of rooms at the hotel in Los Angeles, he said to his wife, "Do you want to go shopping?" She said, "No, not yet." "Well," he said, "I won't shave until you want to go out." So he was watching the TV, the early show. He got off the chair and fell right on his face. He was gone. It never interested him to the point of wanting to have the experience, yet he's gone. I say, don't wait, desire it now. Now, Jean loved me dearly. Another chap, when I got out of the army by the application of this law, without hurting anyone, honorably discharged, I wrote a friend of mine who was in the army. He's a Freudian, and he teaches it. Now he's in LA. So I wrote him exactly what I did. I did not hurt anyone. I didn't go AWOL. I was called in and honorably discharged by the very man who said to me, "No, I disapprove," my colonel. The same one called me in and approved it, and I didn't raise a finger. I simply applied the law. So I told him. He ignored me completely, wouldn't answer my letter. So he remained in for the duration, and he got out at the end as the other millions got out. But he used to come to my meetings in New York City, and one day he said to me, "You know, Neville, I love coming and listening to you. It interests me. But you know what I do? I stick my feet into the carpet, and I hold on to the sides of my chair to keep my sense of profundity and the reality of things. You turn my daily bread into the substance of theory. I'll have none of it." He wants to be right down here on Earth. Well, he was there on Earth for the entire duration. I told him what I did. A simple, simple thing. I went to bed in the barracks with all the other men around me, and I dared to assume that I was home in New York City, and that right before my eyes came that same sheet of paper, or similar, that my colonel had sent back saying, "Disapproved." And it came down this way, and then a hand from here. I didn't see the face. I saw the hand, and the hand took a pen and scratched out the word "disapproved" and boldly wrote in script, "Approved." And a voice said to me, "That which I have done, do nothing." I awoke. I was wearing this watch that my wife gave me when I was drafted. It was 4:15. I did nothing. At the end of 9 days, the colonel calls me in, and I was honorably discharged, and that same signature. His name was Bilbo, Colonel Theodore Bilbo, Jr. His father was senator from Mississippi. And that's my experience. So, with the experience, I am sharing it with a friend, but he wouldn't take it. So I could tell Nixon tonight, or I could tell HAH tonight or tomorrow, but they would say, "Do you have a PhD?" The other day, I went over here to the hotel, the St. Francis Sunday morning for a late brunch. A lady came in. She and her husband came in. Well, I don't talk to strangers. All of a sudden, she looked over at me and she said, "Are you a native?" I said, "I come from Los Angeles." "Oh," she said, "isn't that nice? Isn't that nice?" And she started talking. You couldn't shut her up, just one word after the other. Then she said to me, "What do you do?" Well, what could I tell her? I said, "I write." "Oh," she said, "You do? Novels?" I said, "No." "For magazines?" I said, "No." "Well then, what do you write?" I said, "Metaphysics." Well, she didn't quite know that. That was something that didn't quite penetrate. When I said metaphysics, the word struck her because in the word there is the word physics, metaphysics. "Oh," she said, "you must have a PhD." Of all the things, I said, "No, I don't have a PhD." And then she kept on talking, and the poor husband was this way, and he didn't know what to do. He couldn't shut her up. Unfortunately, I ordered something that takes a long time. I ordered broiled mushrooms and crisp bacon on toast. Well, that's not on the menu. That's a special order. So I regretted that I ordered it. If I had only known, I would have ordered quick scrambled eggs. And then, when I got up to go, she said, "Well, I'm going to pray for you that you win the Nobel Prize." That's an actual fact last Sunday morning in this city. So I will say to anyone, don't ask me about my PhDs or any other degrees. Just believe it. I am telling you what is true concerning my own experience. There isn't one person named in Scripture as an author. Yes, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but that's all anonymous. No one knows who they are. No one knows who wrote the 39 books of the Old Testament. No one. And so did they have PhDs? Were they doctors of divinity? Any other questions, please? Question inaudible on tape. Answer, no, I would not give up. I'll say this much. Be as the widow of Scripture. And she came and came and came, and the judge finally vindicated her. He said, I don't like the woman. I don't care about the case, but she's bothering me, and because she bothers me, I will vindicate her. Only to get rid of her. Well, then treat God in the same way. He's the big judge, and bother him. You keep on assuming, you told me, Father, to ask for it. I've asked for it in the way you taught me to ask for it. Did you send a man called Neville? He tells me that you sent him, or is he lying? He tells me that if I dare to assume that I am what at the moment reason denies and my senses deny, that I'll get it. Well, is he lying, or did you really send him? Well, if you sent him, then he's your messenger. Well then, why don't you answer me? Just bother him, just as she bothered the judge, and let it come into your world. A man comes at the midnight hour, and he wants something because a friend calls suddenly, and the man said, my children are in bed, and it's late, and I can't come down. But because of his brazen impudence, he came on down and gave them to him. He wouldn't take no for an answer, just wouldn't take no. And people will take no. Don't take no, because he tells you whatever you ask, believing you'll get it. Well, if he tells you that, hold him to it. But people will pass the buck and say, oh, well, it wasn't God's will. Right away they say that they've divorced themselves from God. God became you, and his name is I Am. Do you say I am? That's he. Don't let him get away with it, because the minute you say he on the outside, well, then you are not believing. Unless you believe that I am he, you die in your sins. That's the story. I've got to believe that I am the being spoken of as he. Well, now I will sleep tonight again and again and again and bother him. Question. The lady said, how do you find out what you are doing wrong? Answer. Well, not the main question exactly, why the delay? If she is doing what I am telling tonight to all people, then she isn't doing wrong. She's not doing wrong. I went to the colonel. I was 38 years old and in the Army, and a regulation came down from Washington that any man over 38 was eligible. It didn't say he would get it, but he was eligible for discharge. That rested purely with his commanding officer. He could not appeal it to the divisional commander. It has to rest with the battalion commander. Well, I went to my battalion commander. He allowed as much as, yes, you are 38 years old and therefore you can apply, so I applied. 4 hours later, it was sent back to my company commander, the captain, and the captain called me in and said, I am sorry for your sake, Goddard, but the colonel has disallowed it. And he showed it to me. So I saw the signature and saw the paper. I didn't protest for the simple reason you couldn't. This is the Army, and you can't go beyond what they say is the regulation. So the battalion commander had the final word. If he felt he needed me in the Army, why, I wouldn't know, but he thought he did. And so he said, no. That night I simply slept in my imagination in New York City, almost 2,000 miles away, for I was down in Camp Thorpe, Louisiana, and here I'm sleeping on Washington Square in New York City, and that night in my imagination, as I told you earlier, this is what happened. I still did nothing. 9 days later, he calls me in, and after he gives me a tongue lashing for wanting to get out, he said, do you still want to get out? I said, yes, sir. You can't just say yes to the colonel, so I sirred him to death. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You still want to get out? Yes, sir. Do you know the best-dressed man in this country today is the man who wears the American uniform? I said, Yes, sir. You still want to get out? I said, Yes, sir. And I kept on yesing him to death, and then he got up and signed a piece of paper. He said, Sign that other form. And then that evening I was honorably discharged, and he came out to me, a nice chap, a big, tall, strapping fellow, and put his hand forward and he said, Goddard, I will meet you in New York City after we, and the emphasis was on we, have won this war. I said, Yes, sir. No regrets. So I went off to my train into New York City. He was doing his job. If I had to be in the army, I would like to follow a man like that. He was a real leader. No question about it. I don't imagine that man would have asked me to do something that he himself would not willingly do. I don't believe he would. He was a real man, Colonel Theodore Bilbo, Jr. Now let us go into the silence.